Jackson Hayes is the pick for the Pels. In for the Hawks at number 8, Andy. Tell us about him.
Well, I will say at least I got this one right in my mock draft. So
okay.
I got to credit myself on this one because I thought, as Tom said, that Atlanta needed another big. Now, Jackson Hayes was hurt for the NIT, so we didn't get a chance to fully see him at Texas develop. But Texas, I don't care who their head coach has been. With Rick Barnes, Shaka Smart, they've had great success with bigs. LaMarcus Aldridge, Mo Bamba, Jarrett Allen in this building. There's definitely been players that have been successful. He's only scratching the surface, B, and I'd like to hear from you because you were doing what he was doing much higher level.
Yes, I like Mr. Hayes because you know what he does?
So take it away.
Higher level.
Yes, he dunks and blocks shots, and that's all I was doing at UNC, and that's all that he was doing at Texas, and you need a guy like that. We're talking about these guards, and we're talking about so many different things they can do on the perimeter, but you still need somebody to do the dirty work. You still need a guy that can get those defensive rebounds, in those defensive possessions, block shots, give you an interior presence. I know they're trying to make it seem like big men are dinosaurs, but big men that are versatile and are able to block shots, rebounds, and then maybe switch in a pick and roll and move their feet, those guys are still very valuable, kind of similar to like a Clint Capella.
Yeah, you're totally right, Brendan. And what I love is that he's still adjusting to his size. He was a 6-foot freshman in high school that grew to 6'11". Wow. He's a freakish athlete, so he still has time to grow. People are looking at his stat just 10 and 5. Here's a guy, when you're a 6-foot freshman and the next thing you know you're a 6'11" senior in college, you still haven't developed into that size yet. Because he's a great athlete and his parents are great athletes, he has a chance to grow and to be something that could be a shot blocker and just more than a guy that dunks and rebounds.
And that's kind of like Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis had this giant growth spurt. He was a guard originally, and I'm not saying he's going to be Anthony Davis, but in terms of similarity with when he grew.
And his father, as Smitty talks about, obviously longtime tight end and tight end coach, now the GM and head coach of the XFL franchise in St. Louis.
Don't forget Mom. She hooped at Drake now.
No, I know that. I just wanted to say the XFL franchise in St. Louis. I knew they had the Blues. I wasn't sure about that. I am sure about this, that now you wait for the guys that dip, and there's always a conversation about that. For Cam Reddish now as we continue to look, because look, when the beginning of the season for college began, right, B, would you tell me, those three Dukies seemed like they could be 3 of the first 4 picks, let alone 3 of the first 8. Now you get down into the 9 spot, Washington Wizards alum that you are. How about where the Wiz are here, and is Reddish a fit for them?
Well, listen, the Wiz have a lot of problems, so Cam Reddish can definitely fit for them. They're looking for somebody that can fill a lot of different slots, a lot of different holes. And listen, Cam Reddish didn't have the type of performance that we thought he would have. I agree with Steve that he kind of got lost in the mix. Cam Reddish was a kid that when you saw him playing high school, was used to having the ball in his hands. Being the third option, I think he struggled with that. I think his confidence wavered a little bit. That's why you saw him only shoot 35% from the floor, which is not great for somebody that's supposed to be an elite level lottery pick. And then 33% from 3. Those aren't the numbers you want to see from a shooter, but when you watch him play, the mechanics are there, the form is there, the footwork is there, and then I love the fact that he became a defensive player. I had no idea he could defend at that level. He really fit in defensively, so I feel if you get a guy that's able to commit defensively and then he gets more confident in his shot, he'll be just fine at the next level. 2 things that happen all in one foul swoop as Rui Hachimura is the pick. He and Brandon Clark both among the top group forwards at Gonzaga. But then a subtle storyline creeps in, something we haven't said in a draft in, I don't know, forever. The Hawks are becoming a huge winner at the draft. What? They were really high on 2 players and weren't sure which one to make sure to trade for. DeAndre Hunter, who's the other one? That would be Cam Reddish. The Hawks are in the next spot. Hachimura, tell us about him, Andy.
Well, he has developed as well as you could argue any player in college basketball over the last couple of years. I was actually in Japan with Gonzaga when they played Pitt, when they recruited Rui Hachimura. This is years ago. And they had no idea he was going to become this good. At Gonzaga, players have been able to do this. He's a sponge. He's just learning English. He's just picked it up even more so. And by the way, Washington is a great fit. International city, obviously, for Rui Hachimura. He's got 46 members of the Japanese media following him here. I think he will love playing in the nation's capital, and I certainly think that fans in D.C. will be drawn to his charismatic behavior.
Listen, I don't know what about the charismatic behavior, but I do know about his game. I love his game. I love the fact that he's a pit bull inside, but more important, he gives you versatility in the pick and roll game. I keep stressing about the mid-pick and roll. That's what today's NBA is all about. Rui Hachimura is a big that's offense has improved, but the thing that I like about him, he can switch on a pick and roll, and you don't feel like he's a big on the island, like he's a fish out of water. He can slide his feet, kind of similar to what we saw Kevon Looney do for the Golden State Warriors at times in the playoffs. Rui Hachimura can bring that to the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, and he's very consistent. Scored in double figures in 35 out of 37 games. He has a very good mid-range shot, and I know everybody's going to say he needs a three-point shot. Everybody can't have a three-point shot in day one, but he has a very good mid-range. He averaged 19 and 6 on a winning program, and he still has some upside. Great size. This is a good fit. This is a good pick for the Washington Wizards.
All right, we get a chance to talk about some of the picks that have been occurring already. If you're just joining us, clearly Zion, then Morant, and then R.J. Barrett, as you thought. DeAndre Hunter to the Hawks at 4. And then it was Garland to the Cavaliers, and this man, Jarrett Culver, going at 6 to the Timberwolves, who traded into that spot for the Phoenix Suns, who end up getting 11 and Dario Saric in the trade-off. So again, T-Wolves into the 6th spot, getting Culver. Then it was Kobe White at 7 to Chicago. The Pels in their new spot get Jackson Hayes, Hachimura to the Wizards, and the Hawks with a chance to get around. The Hawks said they were really high on after the top 3. They thought they were the 4th and 5th best players. They may get them both if Reddish is the pick at number 10. And I know our boy G. Hill would be thrilled if that happened. We're thrilled to have on set a man who would know plenty about Jarrett because he was coaching him into the championship game, and Chris Beard, who's kind enough to join us. So, first of all, give us the proud Papa feel. You knew he was going to get picked, but when you hear his name called and think about him at the next level, Chris.
Special. I mean, I just think back about 2 years ago when I was in his living room recruiting him, and we talked about being in the green room. So to have it culminate over there with Mom and Dad and 2 brothers and Grandma is just special.
Chris, the one word that comes to me is winner. What did you see in Jarrett that told you he was a winner?
Well, first of all, I saw the talent, the length, the athleticism that everybody sees, but then I had a behind-the-scenes look at his character, his love of the game, his competitiveness. And I just think when that kind of talent intersects with love of the game and character, special things can happen, like sitting here at the lottery, watching him go across the stage.
Chris, I got a chance to cover you guys with Zach, Zaire Smith and also Jarrett Culver. From his freshman year where he played and did a lot of things for you, you put the ball in his hand in his second year, and he thrived. Can you just talk about how when the ball was in his hand, he became even a more dynamic player?
Yeah, I thought he was one of the most improved players in college basketball from year 1 to 2. The biggest thing he did is became a passer. He worked all summer on the pick and roll reads, the passes, and I thought he was not only one of the better passers in the Big 12, but really in college basketball.
Coming into the league, you talk about his work ethic, and every good young player needs that, but who do you see him translating to, or similarities you see, like, hey, you can compliment this guy, somebody that hasn't seen him play a lot?
Yeah, I respect the question, but I just think Culver can be his own man. I think we've gotten that question a lot, and we try to even, this year coaching him, we try to find NBA players to study in the film room. But I just think Jarrett possesses so many different things that I wouldn't want to limit him. I would just say I think he can become his own man.
Chris, maturity level at the next level obviously will change for all players who will grow, but from a leadership standpoint, give us a sense of the type of things that you witness that you know will translate well to that level, because that can cut down that lead time from becoming a college player to an NBA player in that transition.
Yeah, first of all, he has a poise that I've never coached before. He never gets too high, and he had a lot of chances to be there. And he never gets too low, and we had our share of disappointment this year like all teams do. So he's always just kind of poised and composed. And then everything you hear about the love of the game is true. Like literally his agent told me a couple hours ago that they're going to go find a gym for him tonight.
Love that.
So, I mean,
yes.
I think I love the game, but if I got drafted, I don't think I'd be in the gym tonight. But that's Jarrett Culver.
Chris, you lost so much off of the previous team, and there were some doubters. Not saying I was one of them.
You were, Andy.
I know, but I got right on board pretty early on in the tournament, that's for sure, driving that bus in the fireside chat. But he had to take on more responsibility when you lost so much from the previous year. How did he handle that?
He was born for these moments. If you know about Jarrett, not only a lot of pressure to pick his hometown school. He's from Lubbock. He chose to stay and play at Texas Tech, so a lot of pressure from day one. But he just thrives in that. It's a combination of putting the time in, and he has a strong faith. And to me, when come game time, Jarrett just has fun because he's already paid the price and he believes in himself.
Do you honestly believe his agent is going to get him a gym to work out tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to be there with you. I don't have your cell phone, but I have Andy's. But I'll text Andy a picture tonight
text us
where
that.
the gym's shooting.
He's going to the gym tonight? No way.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Can't make this stuff up, guys.
No way.
For me, is watching your team is predicated on defense, and Jarrett fell into that. But also talk about him on the defensive end. But what I love is at his size that he will stick his nose in there and rebound it. He rebounded like 7 to 8 rebounds for you guys throughout the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. Just defensive mentality and rebounding, but above all, he's competitive. I remember his very first pickup game when we signed him 2 summers ago, and he's out there guarding Keenan Evans and Zach Smith. So the first thing about Jarrett defensively is he's competitive. He's kind of old school. He don't want to be scored on. So we had to work with him about team defense and stuff like this, but he's just internally competitive to defend from day one.
Coach, appreciate a few minutes again. Congratulations on a wonderful season for your program. And, of course, from the Proud Papa moment, enjoy the gym tonight with the Culver
Make
folks.
sure you text me. Text me.
I'm
You
definitely
still
going
got
to
a coaching coach. You still got a coach.
picture.
As we await to see who the Hawks take next, we look back to one last year.
An acrobatic finish. Little crossover, step back, and it's good! What a play by Doncic! Trey's gonna launch from deep, it looks like. Got it! Trey Young, tricky dribbles, spins, turns, drives, throws it up off the glass and in! What a move by the rookie!
The passes he makes take your breath away sometimes. How does he find these guys?
Trey Young and Doncic are both so prolific.
Nice.
We look back at how the picks were acquired. Remember the Trey Young Doncic flip last year, talked about often. Well, they may be flipping with joy in Atlanta now because with the 10th pick, it is in fact Cam Reddish who is the choice. Again, reports were out there and in conversation with Atlanta. It seemed like, Smitty, the thought of the Hawks were, after that top 3, in some order, the 4th and 5th best players, and we know their order because they traded for Hunter, were Hunter and Reddish. They end up getting Hunter and Reddish.
I thought the Atlanta Hawks organization has done a fantastic job. It didn't look great with 8 and 10, coming into this draft. To be able to get both these outstanding young men, both these guys has great size, both can defend, and then you have a guy that Cam Reddish that I think can be an elite shooter. Also with DeAndre Hunter, who shoots the 3 ball, to go along with Collins and Trey Young. I think they've done a fantastic job, and Coach Pierce is the right coach for these youngsters.
Brendan, there's always talk about all the things that Cam doesn't do. Can we talk about what he does do well? What gives you a sense, especially now looking at this group where you've got Trey Young, you've got Hunter, John Collins, Herter, nice group. How does Reddish fit into that mix now in Atlanta?
Well, the first thing he does well is he dresses well. I think he's the best dressed young man at the draft. We talk about swag, big drip. He has all of it. It's all put together well. I love how he came out. I love the fashion. But then when we just talk about his actual game and the basketball standpoint, we talked about this before. He already defends at elite level. And it's hard to get young kids to understand that they have to compete defensively. A lot of times that's something that takes 3 or 4 years to develop. He has that going in right away. And then the shot wasn't there at Duke, but we also talked about that. I think that was more of a confidence thing. For the first time in his life, Cam Reddish was the 3rd option. He was used to being the number 1 option at all times. So he's going to have to get used to hitting shots, even though he's not the number 1 option, because he won't be the number 1 option for Atlanta. But I think you're going to see his confidence go through the roof. You're going to see his game rise up as well, because all the mechanics are there. When you watch him play, he's a player that baffles you because everything he does looks good, looks smooth. The shots just didn't fall.
I just hope he doesn't get hung up on the number 10. Some players get all worked up about where they're selected.
I hope he does get hung up on number 10. I want him pissed off that he was number 10.
I think he'll be irritated anyway, but there have been plenty of great players that have come in this range. So he can still, he doesn't have to, I guess I should say, he doesn't need to worry about that he's number 10.
No, not at all.
He went to the right team for him, a team that wanted him. That's a big difference, too. A team that wanted him.
Well, when you look at number 10, we have number 15 in Kawhi, number 15 in Giannis Antetokounmpo, 2 guys were the best player in the regular season and postseason. I think for him, I want him to be upset because he has the talent to be in the top 3. He has a great fit, and I want him, Andy, to be upset that he was the 10th pick.
And that's the thing. When you talk to people that watch Cam, even in high school, people that had to have dealings with him, they said sometimes his energy level was like this. I think being drafted number 10 when he came in thinking he was going to be top 5 coming out of high school, I think that's something that can light the fire underneath him. I'm with you, Smitty. I love the fact that he's number 10 and he can use that as fuel.
And let's talk about size, too. He is plus 6'8", 6'8" and plus. That's going to really help him out.
Let's also not forget, we ribbed the brotherhood thing, but having Grant Hill in the area, part of that group, a Duke guy, that's a nice relationship. And how about what the Hawks are doing? They know they can't spend on big
players. Did you go to Duke? You are pumping the brotherhood so much on this show.
Why do you get so offended
are you alumni?
There's no Duke here. There's no Duke here.
It's very important to point out, Tom, which we will, when you look at the Hawks, they are understanding they're not getting big names, right? So they're happy to take in the Hill contract. But how about the group they have now, this core of studs the last couple of years in the tournament?
Well, let's focus on what they're doing. They're trying to get a critical mass of young assets that are going to pop at a time when they have a bunch of cap room. And guys, next year they're lining it up nicely where they're going to have a ton of room after everybody spends like drunken sailors in the next 2 weeks. I mean, you're going to see the NBA spend a ton of money on free agents. They're playing the game for next year, and they've got time to do it now as they let these guys come together, see who the keepers are, and then that should be an appealing story for a free agent. And Atlanta's a decent city of choice for a lot of guys. Great place to live. You know that.
Yes, it is, Tom, and I'm with you. And I think the one thing I love what the Hawks organization did, they kept trying to win at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And yes, they have a group that they wanted to go out and keep winning. There was no, I don't want to say the word, but Atlanta Hawks, but they kept trying to win. That's what I love.
What I love is they're getting all young guys that are good people. When you talk about Trae Young, when you talk about Hunter, when you talk about Cam Reddish, all those guys have good reputations being good people. They're trying to set the culture. When you're a young team, the culture is very important. If you have guys that aren't workers or have guys that don't have the right type of mentality, it can mess things up. The culture
and add John Collins in that as well.
Oh yeah, and the culture is being set in Atlanta.
We've got a lot of Cams here, so back-to-back Cams, not a problem. But it just happened. Watch B. Wood light up because we talked about the highest Tar Heel since Harrison Barnes. We'll talk Cam Johnson, way higher than people thought. Big story on the other side. But first, Ro is with some happy Hawks fans. Ro, we're not used to saying that at the draft.
Definitely not used to saying that. I'm back that you missed me. So as we saw, Cam Reddish is coming to the Highlight Factory, and I'm surrounded by these three gentlemen from Atlanta who made the trip, traveling up to Brooklyn. So number one, you actually wanted Cam Reddish.
Oh, yeah, well, for sure we wanted Cam Reddish. You know, when you come out at a night with two versatile players, start off with DeAndre Hunter, you know, two proven guys from two proven programs who can play both sides of the ball. We're excited. City of Atlanta's ready.
So whose idea was it to make this trip all the way from Atlanta up to Brooklyn to witness the draft?
It's been on our bucket list forever, man. I think we were trying to come up here a few years ago. We didn't make it, and then we put it on our list. We're going to make it to the 2019 NBA draft, and, hey, we made it.
So now that you're here, are you looking forward to this season? Are you going to be attending games on a regular basis?
Yes, we'll be attending many games. They're going to college, but I'll go for them. I'm going to be at a lot of games, going to support my team, Trae, Cam, all of them. We'll be ready.
A very young, fresh nucleus for the Atlanta Hawks, and I got a nice nucleus right here, and they're all ATL fans. Hey, Casey, back to you.
All right, Rose, thank you very much. From one Cam to another, go ahead, Brendan. Have the it surprise. Not only the pick, but for the team for you with Phoenix at 11.
I thought that Cam Johnson was definitely going in the first round. I had no idea he was going this high. And then the fit to Phoenix. Everybody up here to a man probably thinks that Phoenix needs a point guard. Am I right? And then they end up taking Cam Johnson. Now, they do get a dynamic shooter. The fit is a little bit questionable because they did take Josh Jackson a couple years previous before that. But I just don't really understand the fit. But I will say this. Cam Johnson is ready to play right now. He can put the ball on the floor. He's not the best athlete in the world, but he doesn't have to be because he understands how to play. He understands screening, slipping the screen, where to be on the court. Was the best shooter in the ACC this season, and it wasn't even close. His stroke is a thing of beauty.
Yeah, he moved up essentially from Pitt to North Carolina in the ACC. Got better every year of his college basketball career, but I would say this. I think we have to caution ourselves about fit because we don't know. This screams a movement here for Phoenix.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Andy, but this also screams to me that they might be getting their point guard in free agency because, you look, their need is a point guard, but Cam can flat out shoot the basketball. Cam's a winner. Whether he's with the Phoenix Suns or not, he has this type of talent. Surprised that he went this high, but I like him. I've always told Brendan, here's a kid that's a winner, and I like to pick for him wherever he ends up. But I think the Phoenix Suns might be getting their point guard in free agency.
Look, two things. This is way higher than you go to any mock anywhere that Cam was supposed to be. So that's interesting for Andy, whether it's Phoenix or whoever would trade in. And the crazy part, and I hate to use that word, but Tom, to Brendan's point, they went out of a spot where you could have gotten a point guard. Now, there are rumors maybe Kyrie comes here and D'Angelo Russell could be a guy perhaps. They got some money. But why would they move out of a pick they could have drafted their point guard into a spot where they got a guy seemingly way higher than people expected? You figure that?
We've asked the question why about Phoenix every year. And they've had the hardest time trying to find a signature player and trying to find something to build around. Guys, I see Cam as fitting in on a good team. He's ready to come in and be a prototypical stretch four who's knocking down meaningful shots. At 23 years old, he's ready. It's just very curious to have him go there where because he's not going to be a feature player that way. He's much more of a big-time complementary player on a better team, which you'd see later in like the teams.
Well, yeah, my last year in Cleveland, I got a chance to play with James Jones, who is now in charge of making decisions in Phoenix. Hey, James, man, you got to holler at me, man. I don't know what you're doing, brother.
So that's why
it reminds you of James Jones, the way he plays.
Yeah. A player like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, okay, he might have made more sense because he had to play the 1 and the 2 for Virginia Tech this past season. He was ranked, for what you believe, higher than Cam Johnson here in the lottery. When Justin Robinson went down from Virginia Tech, he had to play the 1. So had Phoenix selected him at this spot, that might have made more sense.
Well, the idea of Kobe White, too, is a guy with Devin Booker. When you look at this team, they have some shooters. But remember also this about today, because we talked about reported deals, right? They moved T.J. Warren today, right, to Indiana. Again, not official till the 6th of July. There you go. But when you look at it, Tom, that, to your point, B. Wood said when we were all, hey, look, I'd be in on T.J. Warren. That dude is a bucket getter. You put him in he's not Lou Williams, but he gets buckets. So it's been from the beginning of the day to now an interesting one for Phoenix.
And just sliding back. If you go back from 6, you got to get whatever you thought you could get at 6 at this position. And they gave up the chance at 6 to get their choice sort of what they need. So it's a head scratcher.
Phoenix is going to Phoenix. That's the one thing that we're seeing right now. And like I said, I think Cam is going to help this team. I think he's going to bring shooting in. When you look at him and Booker, they're definitely going to have some shooting on that court. But the fit is a little bit head scratching, especially when they could have gotten a point guard, maybe a guy like Kobe White that you could pair with Booker, and then you could set your backcourt for the future. Phoenix is going to have to explain this bit. James Jones, holler at me, man. You still got my number, brother.
The backcourt of the future may be in question for Charlotte. What about Kemba, their best all-time player? The Hornets right now.
The Charlotte Hornets missed the playoffs in the 18-19 season and could potentially miss much more with their all-star point guard Kemba Walker being an unrestricted free agent this summer. The Hornets haven't made the playoffs in 7 of the last 9 seasons, and Walker, the Hornets' all-time leader in points, three-pointers, and minutes played, is eligible for the Supermax extension after being named to third-team All-NBA. However, he is expected to explore free agency. Charlotte's backcourt depth took a hit, with the future Hall of Famer Tony Parker announcing his retirement. After winning 39 games last season, James Borrego heads into his second season as Hornets head coach with 3 picks in the 2019 NBA Draft, where the Hornets will try to add more young pieces alongside the likes of Malik Monk and Miles Bridges.
All right, so the pick is in, and it is P.J. Washington who ends up with the Hornets. Smitty, how do you feel about P.J. and then the fit with Charlotte?
You know, I like it. I think that P.J., you know, if they keep Kemba, they need somebody that can score. This kid can play down on the block. He's only 6'8", but he plays bigger than 6'8". I like that he can step out. I think for him is, can he handle himself defensively and ruggedly down on the post as a 4? But I love the selection. He's a winner. He plays extremely hard. He has great athleticism, they need a guy that can score, and I thought this was a good pick.
Smitty, I love the pick. I love the fact that he's improved from his freshman year to his sophomore year, especially as a three-point shooter. 23% from three as a freshman, 42% as a sophomore in 78 attempts. So he's proven that, hey, I have the ability to improve, get better from behind the three-point line. But then he can get rough and tumble down there in the paint. Really, really strong, led Kentucky in scoring, and they ran a lot of their offense through him. And they weren't trying to disguise it. They were straight turn forward, throw the ball to PJ, let him go one-on-one, get to his left shoulder and cause a problem. So I like the fact that he can cause a problem in the paint, but he's showing you he's willing to work on his jumper and get better behind the three-point line.
To that point, I love the fact that he knew he wasn't ready last year. You know, the easy thing at Kentucky is just go after 1 year. He knew he wasn't ready, improved himself in the offseason, became more physically stronger, improved his offensive game, more emotionally mature for this kind of a situation. And then in the NCAA tournament, he didn't think he was going to play in that last game when he got hurt, and he's a gamer. He made sure he got out there. They ended up losing in overtime, but it wasn't because of him. So, I mean, he's a player I think can come in and help Charlotte next season.
On a day where, not shockingly, it began with the news that a Kentucky alum from 2012 in the draft, MKG, would opt back in. I know, shocking everyone at the table.
He should have announced that at the end of the season.
It is 7 years later that now it's another Kentucky kid in PJ for a team that, let's be fair, Tom, has that huge Kemba question looming. I don't know what else you could do to say I want to be there than what Kemba's done to this point.
It's bigger than that. I mean, Kemba, you got Jeremy Lamb, you saw Tony Parker retired. They have so many questions in free agency, and to take a player like this, at least to plug a void out there, have a young body that's going to be able to play, makes some sense. You know, Charlotte's one of these teams that's sort of stuck. I mean, they're going to have to get Kemba Walker back, because if he leaves, they don't have the cap room to replace him. Just because he goes and takes $33 million somewhere else doesn't mean they have a $33 million slot to get somebody else, because they're committed to Batum and Biyombo and Marvin Williams, all big money, and all that adds up. So,
you know what? It might be the best thing in the world for Kemba and Charlotte if he left, because even if you sign Kemba to big money, you're still stuck in no man's land. At least if Kemba were to go on to free agency, it would help his career. He'd get a chance to compete for a title right now, and then they would clear that money off the books, and as the years go by, clear some of this other money off and start over. I almost think that Charlotte has to hit the reset button, because I don't know what they are right now.
Yeah, I'm with you, B. Wood, but like what Casey said, it's humbling to hear a guy like Kemba Walker. Rumors that I would take less to stay with Charlotte. I am just looking to see what Charlotte does. To your thing, B. Wood, what's their direction, and why don't you want to keep a guy like Kemba Walker who wants to be there?
But, you know, I feel like we said the same kind of thing about Orlando a few years ago. Like, how far away is Charlotte from being Orlando?
How excited are you about Orlando?
Yeah, I'm not that excited, but at least they were in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs.
Yeah, Orlando made the playoffs, but it wasn't nothing. It wasn't anything to write home about. So I don't think Charlotte's trying to be Orlando. I think what they're trying to do is figure out a way how they can be relevant again in the NBA. And I know Kemba wants to stay there to a certain degree. He said he'd take less. I know the city of Charlotte loves Kemba Walker. But the thing is, if you pay Kemba Walker $221 million, or even if he takes a slight pay cut and takes $200, what do you do next? You still have some of these bad contracts with Batum, MKG, and Bismack Biyombo on your books. How do you resolve that?
Only for one more year, though.
Yeah. But even so, okay, they clear some of that money. How do they get better? I honestly think a mutual split would be the best situation where Kemba goes to possibly win a title somewhere, or could at least compete for a title. He hasn't been out of the second round of his whole career, and then Charlotte gets to start over.
But do you think, Tom, because a lot of these players have 1 year left, they could be tradable because teams will want to pick up some of that money just for 1 year?
Could be, but then you got to get players that are on Kemba's timetable. That are, you know, Atlanta's lining up with a bunch of youngs. New Orleans is lining up with a bunch of youngs. Here you'd have Kemba and all the money with him. So you'd have to do veteran for veteran trades like you're talking about and try to rejigger this thing in a way. And so I don't know how relevant that makes them in the NBA.
Remember this trade deadline where it was suited this year? All-Star game in Charlotte, couldn't move him. It's that PR thing. But should they have if you weren't sure that you were going to sign him and gotten something for Kemba instead of nothing? Miami, they've gotten the most out of their roster, but still seems somewhere in that mid-drift in the East.
One Last Dance had plenty of memorable moments.
It counts! It counts!
However, the Miami Heat came up short in their goal of making the 2018-2019 playoffs, and they head into next season without Dwayne Wade and Udonis Haslem, who both retired. Two key members of the Heat, Hassan Whiteside and Goran Dragic, have player options, while Heat President Pat Riley has some unfinished business to try and get the Heat back into contention. With only the 13th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, Riley plans on doing so with some free agency moves to help bolster the Heat's roster. After not having any selections in the 2018 draft, Pat Riley and the Heat will continue to try and build around their young draft picks of Bam Adebayo, Justice Winslow, and Josh Richardson.
Let's be fair, when you look at the Miami Heat, you kind of microcosm in some ways of Charlotte in some of these bad contracts. See Hassan Whiteside that are kind of hanging over with the way the Bam has played. But now, unlike Bonnie Tyler, who was always holding out for one, Andy Katz, they have a hero in Miami.
Look, he's a big shot maker, highly confident shooter, had his moments with Kentucky. One of these players also that didn't have to be the guy, but he picked his spots, especially later into the season. And I don't think you could argue that he thought he would be the 13th player in the NBA draft when he originally was going to go to Wisconsin and then ended up switching to go to Kentucky. So he's a bit of a late bloomer, Brandon, but it's an interesting pick for Miami here at 13.
I like the pick. I like the versatility. 6'5", can put the ball on the floor. He's more than just a shooter. So I think that is very important that Miami get some more shooting, get some guys like him. So I really like this pick. I think that Pat Riley got this one right.
Yeah, he can flat out shoot it, and I thought, like what you said, Andy, at times he was a gamer from Kentucky. You know, P.J. Washington was the best player, but I thought for him, he stepped up at times, made shot. He's a good rebounder for his size. And what I love is he took some big shots. He wasn't afraid of the moment, and I think that's what the Miami Heat liked about him.
Tom, when you look at where the Heat are, we know obviously who runs the team. Got a heck of a coach too, but Wade County now officially gone. What county is it now when you look at this team and where they sit with this identity?
It's unknown transition county. There's probably nobody more frustrated with this than Pat Riley. He loves to win more than anybody, or as much as anybody. I was visiting with him recently, and his brain is churning on how to do another leapfrog move where they can free up enough flexibility to go leap everybody, because that is a premium destination for free agents. It's just not as clean as it was back in 2010 when he was able to clear the decks and bring the big three. They're working their way out of that. He's going to have to be careful and disciplined as to what kind of financial commitments he makes to keep that flexibility to do some boom move again. And a player like Hero is a solid player that can just build on that nucleus.
If we don't know where Charlotte is Miami in some sort of no man's land as well?
Well, but they're a glamour destination. Their lifeline can always be free agency. Charlotte doesn't have that. That's why I think Charlotte's in a trickier situation.
Yeah, no offense to B-Wood, who does live in the area. There's no Cleveland or Prime 112. I'm sure they're great places.
Don't disrespect Charlotte. Charlotte is a lovely city. Charlotte is a lovely city. I'm glad to call it home.
I think we need to take the time, with no offense to Miami, because it's hard to figure them out, to the team that maybe is the most interesting to try and do that with, and they've got 3 picks beginning with this next one at 14, and that's Boston. Smitty, you go back 2 years ago and think about, and Tom mentioned it, talking about all that, the Danny Ainge style, right? All the stocking of the picks. They had put together a team on that edge. Then to not make the conference final. Kyrie seems to be gone. A lot of yapping from players. Horford now on his way out. Seemingly talks about others, and an unknown for Boston now moving forward.
Yeah, it is. And I think for me is, and everybody said that, it was a gamble to take Kyrie for the pick. I thought that was okay, even if you lost Kyrie Irving. What I'm scratching my head is that they might lose Al Horford. Yeah. I thought that was a lock, everybody up here on this panel, just because I thought Al Horford will be there, and you just would have to replace Kyrie Irving. Replacing Kyrie Irving and possibly Al Horford, that's going to be tough to come back from the Boston Celtics. Are they pushing the reset button, or are they still going forward?
Well, I will just say this. I mean, living up in the area and growing up in the area, last year's team was more likable. Not this past season, the one before. When they were young, there wasn't all these expectations, and I almost feel like sometimes they like that role of being sort of under the radar. Now we're going to surprise everyone. And this past season, They just didn't meet it in all the chirping that was going on, everything you were saying. And it feels like not a complete reboot, but it feels like it's a reset at this juncture.
I think this is what we like to call a mini rebuild. They're not tearing it all the way down like I suggested that Charlotte do, but they're obviously going to have to let their younger guys grow into star roles when we talk about guys like Tatum and Brown, possibly Rozier if they don't get any other point guards. So their young guys are going to have to go back and learn what it is to be superstars in this league, what it is to see all the coverage, because Kyrie was a little bit of a shelter this year because he was able to take some of that coverage away, but he also took the ball away from those guys, and they didn't get to play with the ball as much. It takes you a while as a young player to understand what winning basketball is all about, what playoff basketball is all about. I think Boston is going through a mini rebuild. A lot of people are critical of Danny Ainge. I'm not. I think he's done a pretty good job. The only move I would have done a little bit differently, they had a chance, I think, to really go after PG-13, and I think I would have done that. But outside of that, everything else, I agree with what Danny Ainge has done.
It's been a big Duke night. Is this, speaking of Duke, is this Jason Tatum's team now moving forward?
No question.
No question.
Yeah.
Tatum and Brown, we got to see what happens. Do they let Horford go? They sure sent the signals that's what's going to happen, which is a shocker. And then Kyrie leaving, I've thought they should have traded him at the trade deadline because I felt like the chemistry without him was better, and that Tatum and Brown proved that they can carry the team, and it's time to believe that now. It's time to see that and believe it. The challenge here is another one of these situations where it's highly unlikely they have cap room to do a major free agent replacement. So even though they lose Horford, and even though they lose Kyrie, they could get $19 million, but they'd have to let Rozier go and Morris and all these other guys. I just don't think that's likely. They're going to keep who they can and then try to blow up the young guys and see if they evolve. And remember, the East is wide open again. They could, if tooled properly, they could be still a significant player in the East.
And the one name we don't mention, or we haven't yet, is Gordon Hayward. And I think their expectations were too high on him early. To come back from that horrific an injury, it just took time, and maybe it just will take more time before he hopefully could get to his full potential.
And something else about Gordon Hayward is coming back, he came back to an unfamiliar situation. He was used to being the guy that had the ball in his hands a lot, and now he comes to a team where all of a sudden, hey, I'm not the best player. I might not even be the second or the third. He was the fourth option. He really wasn't used to that. Without Kyrie Irving there, maybe he gets more back to handling the ball a little bit more in the pick and roll situation, and that gives him a sense of comfort, ability, and normalcy.
I want to, Smitty, are you surprised about seemingly the acceptance from Danny and the Celtics that there needs to be this retool? I mean, Kyrie is one thing, but this was a team, the East is wide open, the league's wide open. They had 3 picks in this first round. Are you surprised that it looks like they're going to keep these picks rather than put it into some kind of a Danny Ainge move where you get something bigger?
Well, he might have been trying. He might just couldn't get the pick he wanted. You can't, I'm sure Danny was working and trying, but he might not got it done. But he still has some 3 picks. Yes, they're later. I don't know if it's a mini reboot or not. It's just that we saw a path of the Boston Celtics maybe vying for an Eastern Conference Finals at least, or a championship. We don't see that right now, but they still have some talented young players, and also the possibility of Gordon Hayward getting back to all-star level.
Remember this point, it's not always, they were trying, and they're always trying. I mean, you think back when they got Ray Allen. I mean, that was a phenomenal move when they made that trade, and it's not easy to make those kind of deals.
Remember this when you talk about the East from the NBA side. Kawhi could go, right, in Toronto. You think about Philadelphia, Jimmy Butler could leave, and then is Tobias the guy they max? Maybe, maybe not. There could be changes there. Milwaukee, Middleton, you're going to have to get paid. Brogdon, you might have to get paid, especially if he gets an offer sheet. People talk about the West being open. The East is wide open right now with the unknowns we have on the roster.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns, and so that when you have all those unknowns, it's just a different type of situation where as a GM you say, you know what, let's go for it. And we saw Masai do that with Toronto. LeBron's gone. We don't know who the best team's going to be this year. Let's go for it. I think that's what you're going to see, especially with free agency. A lot of the teams that have money, they're going to go for it. We don't know how it's going to shape out. We don't know what it's going to look like, East or West. All we know is the big bad bullies of the NBA are beat up right now. That's the Golden State Warriors. Everybody feels like they have a shot.
There was a time in college basketball, and Hoosier basketball were the big bad bullies. But the man Smitty to my right, when we were talking about the names and looking at him earlier, said, I love this player.
I do. And I think people were down on him, but I'm with you, Andy. He had a torn ligament in his right thumb, his shooting hand. But he never made an excuse. Went out and played extremely hard. Watched him a lot in the Big Ten. He's very aggressive. He came out as a high pick coming out of high school. The numbers are not there because they didn't win it and they didn't get a chance to show much in the NCAA tournament. But this is a kid that has a lot of talent and played with a torn ligament in his right thumb.
Yeah, I covered a bunch of Indiana games this past season, and I saw there were moments when that motor turned on and he was unstoppable getting to the rim. So he has that in his game. He did not reveal the torn ligament in his thumb for quite some time, and then when it was revealed, he got some sympathy, and rightfully so, because he played through it. Here's a situation, though, where Brad Stevens, going back to the well, going back to a Hoosier in Indiana. He was the best player in Indiana coming out of high school, played for his home state school, and so I think there's some comfort, a little comfort food here for Brad Stevens getting Romeo Langford.
Well, listen, this is a guy that he had a big-time reputation coming out of high school, didn't shoot the ball as well as we thought he would, but like Steve just said, the guy had a torn ligament in his shooting hand. When you have a torn ligament in your shooting hand, it's hard to be an elite-level shooter. So I think this is a very good pick for Boston. I think they got another good young guy to go with that young core, and we'll see how all that mixes in. But I think he's very talented, and when you have somebody, like I said, when you talk about these guys that are that 6'5", 6'6" range, that are versatile, that is what the NBA is all about. I'm going to continue to say it because that's where the league is right now. The more versatility you have, the better you're going to be.
Commercial break free through the lottery, but we break to give you time to chew on this as we await 15 this year. I would say it's been a pretty important number in today's association as perhaps the two best in all the land a year ago, both picked at 15.